Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us to another Startup Canada webinar of the Women Entrepreneur Series. For those who haven't participated in this webinar series before, Startup Canada launched in this webinar series before. So Startup Canada launched the Women Entrepreneur Program to provide support during COVID-19, but also to provide general guidance to entrepreneurs in starting and scaling their businesses and all of the moving parts that this implies. For those who don't know me, I'm Maria Ponte, a manager at Startup Canada, program manager, and I'm thrilled to present today Catherine Bell, a serial entrepreneur and founder of Awakening Company. Sorry, that word is so hard to pronounce for me, Awakening Company. Personally, I really enjoyed the book. I read it when I was doing my master's, and I read it this weekend again, and I truly love it. It provides a comprehensive overview of how to achieve a healthy corporate culture and all the benefits that can bring in every aspect of your company. I have it right here. And in this webinar, Catherine will review some of the lessons that she has learned about entrepreneurship, her methods that have a beautiful blend of wisdom, traditions, practical know-how, and business research to provide a step-by-step recipe for successful entrepreneurship. You'll learn how to customize Catherine's recipe to build a solid foundation for your business. So if you want to find more about this book and Awakening Company, please look at www.awakeningcompany.com. I will share this in the chat that we have in Zoom. Catherine, it is a delight to have you here, to share all your experience and expertise in regards to corporate culture and how can business models focus on their employees and communities that they serve. Thank you so much, Catherine.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Maria, and thanks, Jolene, for handling the technology in the background. So today's not going to be a typical business presentation. As Maria was saying, the Awaken Company blends wisdom traditions, business research, and practical know-how. We have been tremendously out of balance. The relentless pursuit of more must be considered, and it must be curtailed. We must move to what is meaningful. We must begin to think about questions like how much is enough as entrepreneurs. And right now we have a real moment in time to consider what is happening and to recreate a new normal. And I truly believe that entrepreneurs, small and medium-sized business owners can lead this new normal. We are under a time of great adversity, and I don't want to underplay that. We're kind of like, you know, the way coal under pressure creates a diamond. We're under that pressure, that adversity to create something new. Adversity always or can lead to increased wisdom. And I think we're becoming a lot wiser as a result of this. And I also think we're becoming a lot more conscious. And we have the opportunity now to create a more harmonious world. So we are in unprecedented times. Many businesses and organizations have been profoundly affected by the pandemic. And what I think organizations, this is a real invitation for us. Everything unfolds in the present moment, and our organizations must reflect this. For our businesses to thrive, we must become emergent, local, and interdependent. And entrepreneurs, small and medium-sized businesses, are set to solve some of the world's greatest challenges because business helps people. And businesses of the future must fulfill people's needs and awaken people's lives. It's time to rebalance by returning to our communities. So on this screen, you see a blank canvas. And I was speaking to an Olympic coach last week, and she was saying that we have about 60,000 thoughts a day. And of those 60,000 thoughts a day, about 85% are negative, 95% are repeating. So my question and invitation for all of us is to consider, how do we want to spend our time? take a moment and consider, what do you want on your canvas? The canvas is blank, moment by moment. And what do we want to emerge? What glorious piece of art do you want to represent your life? And my story, just to share a little bit of background, is one of emergence. So Blue Era was founded in 2008. And aside from this time now, 2008 was probably one of the most challenging times to start a business. And it was an executive search business. And I co-founded it with a woman named Shahana. And we thought to iterate on what had been done in the past. How do we improve and grow what had been done in the past? So we did things like video job descriptions. We incorporated team transformation, that is healthy team practices, into our executive search practices. So we were iterating and growing. And that firm eventually became a top 10 profit firm in Alberta and top 200 in Canada, and was successfully sold to a business. And you know what? That business left Blue Era alone, and Blue Era continues to thrive. So there's also a lesson in that, in terms of acquisition and in terms of how do we treat businesses and how do we treat other human beings. At the same time as Blue Era, you know, I was in a dimly lit cafe in New York City, and the word Awaken company dropped in. And I said to my colleague, Carolyn, who's in Houston right now, I said, Carolyn, this title came in. She's like, Kathy, you've got to write a book on how do we recreate bringing humanity back into businesses. So the Awaken company is a balance between our human needs and our capital needs. I have lots of data on this for you in a bit. So I wrote the book. I wrote a copy of the book. Well, I gave it to my partners. My partner's like, Kath, that was terrible, like absolutely terrible. So I'm like, okay, well, I iterated again and again. And then I wanted Eckhart Tolle's publisher to publish the book, which is Namaste Publishing, because I wanted a different level of consciousness. I've been in Harvard Business. I just wanted a different way, a different means to communicate the message. So of course I asked her, I said, you know, would you be interested in publishing my book? And the answer was no interest. So all of these are like embedded lessons for entrepreneurs and small business owners. Don't stop with the first no. So then I interviewed world leaders for the Awaken company, such as Rose Marcario, the CEO of Patagonia, Otto Scharmer from MIT. And these people did not know me. I just asked them. So you'd be surprised at what happens when you just ask, and life kind of gives you something else. And people said yes, and people started getting on board. And then Namaste Publishing said yes. It won a Nautilus Award. It became a bestseller. And it was as a result of putting attention and intention with energy, and something emerged. Had I planned all of this? No, absolutely not. As well, now I've partnered with a local jeweler, and now we have a jewelry line called the Awaken Project, and the money goes to help female entrepreneurs start their own businesses. So, and the Awaken company, just so everybody knows, we're about igniting passion, playfulness, and purpose with everything that we do. So this collective pause has the real opportunity to help us in the development of our true potential. Think of how much smarter we have become in the last few weeks. Think of how much more cohesive we've become. It's a real invitation. So as I go through this presentation, really consider, like, what do you want on your canvas? This is your life to design. This is your gift to the world. We need everybody. So now I have to go to a bit of a depressing part of the presentation, which is, how have we done? How have we been doing? So consider these three frames to look at your company as entrepreneurs in small and medium-sized businesses. So first is awakening ourselves. Okay, did you know that more than 70% of people are disengaged at work? Look at how much of humanity we're losing in just that. Okay, then relationships. How long an employee stays and how productive they are while they're at the company is directly determined by their relationship with their immediate supervisor. And people rated the worst time of their day, this is worse than picking up the kitty litter, worse than taking out the garbage, as their time with their bosses, the boss holes out there. So to me, it's just a travesty. And overall, over the long term, most businesses, small, medium, and large, underperform and fail. Over 75% of businesses fail in the first 9 years, and this number will get larger, I predict. And also then think of our organization's impact on the environment and the planet. These are some of the reasons why we must wake up. So as you think about your business, how are you awakening yourself, your relationships, your teams, and your communities? And as a result, then the planet. So now what do we do about this? Here are the 3 pillars again. So on all of the data I just gave from the last slide, I have tons of references and research behind that. So if anybody wants it, just email me. Researchers have concluded that companies with a higher percentage of self-aware employees outperform those with lower percentage. In other words, being self-aware is absolutely critical to being a leader within any organizational context. And I actually think self-awareness should be taught back into kindergarten. What are our gifts? What are our work odds? I can tell you, having interviewed thousands of CEOs for positions, you know, the level of self-awareness out there can stand to improve. Now, awakening relationships. So how do we cultivate awesome work relationships? So what the research has shown is that the most disengaged people are those where their boss doesn't even notice them. The second most disengaged group of people are those that bosses notice them for negative reasons. And the most engaged people are those whose bosses notice they're awesome. So how do we notice, begin to cultivate this mindset of noticing what people are great at? That's a real invitation, a real invitation. And then this is fascinating to me. So in terms of organizations that focus on performance and organizational health simultaneously, with a 2/3 emphasis on organizational health, 1/3 emphasis on financial results, are the healthiest organizations. The least successful organizations are those that focus solely on the financial. In the middle is those that solely focus on the culture, but the strongest are those that 2/3 culture, 1/3 financial. It's almost like the culture, so how we hold each other, drives financial results. So how are we showing up? How are we showing up to work together truly? So I'm just going to go through how do we actually do some of these things. So in terms of awakening ourselves, we use a tool called the Enneagram. And the Enneagram provides different levels of health that can point you in the right direction. Now, tons of information on the Enneagram is on our website, and we also have a YouTube videos on it too, so check it out. Everybody needs to know their inner compass, as well as their North Star. So inner compass, North Star. And you'd be surprised at how many leaders and how many clients I've worked with on, we start with that and they often don't know what it is. So what is your unique gift and ability that you're here to share with the world? And I think that's how, you know, this whole canvas of what do you want on your canvas? What's your inner compass? What's your North Star? Now, another practice, people might call it mindfulness, meditating. Other people might call it centering. It decreases our stress, increases our emotional intelligence, increases our productivity, increases our resilience, and increases our self-awareness. So there's an invitation here to consider having some kind of centering practice. It can even be as simple as, okay, I'm going to take a breath and I'm going to breathe into 2 finger widths below my belly button. Another practice is everybody knows when they're coming from a more awake place or a more asleep place. So when we're coming from our best selves, that's more of the awake place. And this is when we're open and expansive. And when we're asleep, we kind of come from this, we're complaining. When we're coming from an asleep place, it's almost like there's this underlying complaint. So whenever I'm in that zone, whenever I'm in that complaining zone, I know that I'm not coming from my highest self. So even having that simple idea of, are you coming from that awake place or more asleep place? And the invitation for us all to be is above the line as much as possible. So as entrepreneurs and as small and medium-sized business owners, these questions are super important. And so what does the world really need? And we're seeing that right now. What do you love, are good at, and have real skills at? What can you get paid for? And what's interesting, I want to talk about this, what can you get paid for? Because I'm seeing a lot of businesses go to no fee. Now, I believe there's a time and a space for that and a certain amount that's needed of that. And it's not sustainable. So we can't swing the pendulum to free because the free isn't as sustainable. It's a question of balance. Maybe it's like, for example, with our work at the Awaken company, our fees now, if people need our help, we will adjust our fee to according to what serves them. And that's being very much emergent. So the strategy is emergent. And yet we have a lot of free YouTube videos to serve community. So it's just knowing that we need a sustainable model. What do you have a willingness to work hard for and are committed to? And you can't underestimate when you know your inner compass, your North Star, and you put your energy behind it, and it's not always easy. Good things tend to happen. And if not, you're learning the whole time. So attention, intention, right place with energy, and things happen. How can you serve right now? What skills do you have to serve? What are you in commitment to? So now that's the whole awakening ourselves piece. Now we're going to move to awakening relationships. So relationships are the backbone for creating amazing organizations. Relationships, for me, create culture. For example, if it weren't for Maria, this presentation wouldn't be happening. The meeting of two personalities is like contact from two alchemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are to be transformed. And that quote is from Carl Jung. Research tells us that people leave managers, not companies. One of the signs of a great manager and a great leader is the ability to describe in detail the unique talents of their people. The confronting question is, how do we create a culture that goes deep into an organization where managers and supervisors have knowledge and skills to create a high quality experience for all? And this is related to any business. So for relationships and awakening relationships, consider, how mindful are you being? Is your full attention in the present moment? Are you curious? Are you listening? Do you know our interconnection? How heartfelt? Do you bring a sense of genuine, heartfelt connection and care? And how spacious, meaning, do you have a sense of, are you giving people a sense of autonomy and control? And how can we awaken relationships with employees, suppliers, customers, community, and the earth? That's the invitation. So now, I woke up at 2 a.m. thinking about this slide. Awakening organizations. And I really do, it's time for an inside out and outside in approach, both. It's both. And I also believe we need a new term for strategy, because strategy is built on war. The term strategy is built on war. And I do believe we need to start thinking more collaboratively together versus being at war with each other. Ultimately, we're here to make each other better. So I'm going to give an example. People support what they create. So this is Margaret Wheatley's quote. People support what they create. And I made a terrible mistake, and Maria, you may remember from the book, with Blue Era and the vision creation. We had a strategy session, and I was like, okay, team, we're going to rally around this vision. And I pounded it into people, but it wasn't very effective. Anyway, you'll learn why. So 2 weeks later, we brought in somebody from Denmark to work with our team. And he asked everybody, what's your vision? What's your underpinning of why? And nobody raised their hands. So that night I cried myself to sleep, thinking I was not a very good leader. And then the very next day we went through and created our vision together. And then we never forgot our vision from there. People support what they create. So this falls under the grouping of energize. But before we get into that, I see these as 3 key pillars of organizations. So energize, sustain, and regenerate. A lot of organizations have the energizing and sustaining down, but very little regeneration time. And we're actually being forced into regeneration time. It's time to tap into our collective capacities to build regenerating and renewing energies. This situation has forced us into a time of regeneration. So energize, the first pillar, is about vision setting, noble purpose, mission, action plans. And what's interesting is with our action plans, we need cultural metrics as well. Remember how I said earlier, 2/3 emphasis on culture, 1/3 on financial. So we need to start building in, what are our cultural metrics? What do we want to create? And then the sustaining piece is about our values and how do we measure them? What is our connection? How are we accountable? How are we responsible? What is our knowledge of structures and our measurement tools? And then the last one, which is the phase that I think we're being forced into, is the regeneration, the pause, renewal, reflection, innovation, getting into our individuality and thinking more deeply about things, analyzing what's working now and what's not working now. The real economy deals with real needs. The metrics of success around culture and these pillars, around these 3 pillars, in addition to financial. These all need to be written down and lived daily. So many companies that we work with they aren't living it. So they may have some plan that they've put on the shelves, but it's about living it day in, day out, and becoming that vision. So how do we emerge? And this is all emergent strategy so that you can pivot on a dime. How do we emerge better? So what's the smallest thing you can do? And when I think of a great leader, I think of Rosa Marcario, who is the CEO of Patagonia. And she said to me, capitalism needs to evolve if we want to save the planet. And I have an urgent call for everybody to change the metrics of success. And as a result, everybody will benefit. Please consider what's the tiniest thing you can do. What can you do to awaken your business or upcoming business for it to be of service? And I believe that the entrepreneurs, the small and medium-sized businesses, are the problem solvers of the future. So back to the canvas. Most people die with their music locked up inside them. And this is Benjamin Disraeli's quote. We all need to be singing our best right now. So how is it that you want to show up after this presentation? What's the smallest brushstroke you can make on your canvas? And as I said, here are some of the things that we do around Enneagram, leadership, relationships, business strategy, and we're doing flexible pricing at this time. And we're very much focused on developing human potential in your consciousness as well as your business. There's our newsletter information. We'll send this all out later. So now, any questions? And thank you all for your attention. And it's really weird talking to a screen.
Thank you so much, Catherine, for this wonderful, insightful presentation, pretty much needed in these uncertain times. Please feel free to ask any questions. You can use the Q&A button, or as well, if you want to share any comments, please feel free to use the webinar chat there. So yes, please let us know if you have any questions. I have here a question. Somebody from the audience is asking, which should be the metrics of a healthy corporate business? And I think this is a very a question that we all ask ourselves, because financial metrics, which should you have. But in this aspect, can you give us some examples, please?
Absolutely, absolutely. So first of all, my invitation would be for us to go deeper. and to look at what is important in our organizations. What are the values that we want to have? And if values is important, measure your values. How can you do that? You can do it by saying performance evaluations. Do you live these values? You can do it via your hiring practices. Do you live those values? What I've also seen is engagement. So people have also done engagement studies and say, we want this to be engaged. We've also worked with organizations on the TOLAT, which is basically gives you like an X-ray vision into your organization's health. We did that with one company, and they went from 0 to over $1 billion in less than 5 years, and they were continually doing the same survey. However, it's super important for us all to consider, how do we actually want to measure it? Because I wouldn't subscribe a one-size-fits-all. I think part of this strategy, Maria, is it's emergent. And part of our kind of our North Star and our inner compass, and everybody's, and the collective. So, you know, Margaret Wheatley, people support what they create. So getting people involved in what are we going to measure, and how are we going to measure it? And those are just some examples that I gave.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Catherine. We have another question here. Great. So about corporate culture, how can HR department select people that are a fit for the culture, for that culture in that company, right? And yes, it's that's all the question says, but giving some contribution to that question. It is great because sometimes when there's a selection process going on, yes, it's easy to say, okay, this person, it's a great fit because it has this and this experience, but how do you know if it's going to be a great fit and will align with your values in a selection process?
That's a great question. And let's go back to even the term, that's the question. And I even want us to think of words like human resources differently, because humans aren't assets. So I think we need to kind of relook at our language as well. So to the question, how do you determine if you're a right fit for a company? You talk to a lot of people in the organization, and you ask them about corporate values, and you ask them about what is it like in the day of a life of. As well, I'd almost suggest if you could ask somebody if you could mirror them for a day, because it's in our behaviors that we see values come to life. So it's in our behaviors that we see values come to life. So those would be my suggestions. And you know, I think that's such a great question. And people really need to think about, am I a fit for this? And if I'm not, then maybe waiting for the next opportunity.
Absolutely. And it's a two-way street for the company to know if that person is going to be a fit. Values that they prioritize, or the opposite, if the person, so it's a two-way street, and yes, it's not easy.
No, and Maria, I really also think that we need to think about, does the organization have a noble purpose that we're in alignment with? And are they presence-based? Are they present in their organizations? For example, one of the reasons I think Blue Era thrived is we did things like, we had presence practices. So anybody could call a presence practice, and we would all meet in the boardroom, and that person would lead the presence practice. It might be an online meditation. It might be just quiet. We also did things like unlimited vacation, because we trusted our people. We trusted people. And what was interesting about that, Maria, is that the first year we did it, people didn't take enough vacation, because the social norms in our business was to be really, really hard workers. So it's there is really an invitation for us to reconsider at this point, what do we want to be part of? How do we want to contribute? And what do we want to let just fall away?
Great, thank you, Catherine. Right now, we don't have more questions. Please feel free to ask any questions in regards to how this can help your specific industry, sector as well. I have a question about this, and while I was reading the book and reading about all these corporate culture measures that you can embed into your company, I thought, yes, great. So Zappos, your example with Zappos, yeah, along the book, it's great. With Patagonia, it's great, like such great companies. But how can startups, of course, with which is our main audience in Startup Canada, startups with limited resources, not only financial, but time, personal, can start implementing these ideas? And that slide that you had about which is the smallest thing that you can do kind of answers this, but I would like you to go in deep into that question, because it's true. I think most of people think, okay, I have this small coffee shop or this company that only has 3 people. How can I implement great corporate culture into my company?
That's another great question, Maria. So a lot of the entrepreneurs and small businesses that I work with, and medium-sized businesses, they don't have their noble purpose down. They don't have the reason why. So let's say a coffee shop. Well, there's so many coffee shops. So what is it in you that inspired you and inspired the organization to create a coffee shop? And so in reflecting on that, and then talking to the team, the coffee shop team, and having something deeper that inspires. You know, when you go to somebody and say, oh, I'm making a coffee, or, oh, I'm making your morning by making this coffee, it's a subtle shift and an important shift, because we're all looking for meaning and individual purpose and belonging. So the time of a seed entrepreneur, when you're at the beginning, it's the time to really do this work and just watch your organization flourish. What I find though is often it's like in my medium-sized businesses, we're still actually working through some of the same stuff. So while we have the business research on it, we're not applying the business research. So having that knowing, doing, we have a knowing, doing gap. So the invitation right now is for us to really consider, how do we want to show up and how do we want to apply this wisdom to serve our communities? And thinking about the pillars of, you know, awakening ourselves, inner compass, North Star, smallest thing we can do, and then our relationship, our teammates. How does the entrepreneur's team relate to that? And how do we create buy-in? And then our community, how do we really serve our community? Really, the options are endless. Like there's so much creativity and possibility in that seed that I would really welcome all entrepreneurs to begin to consider this. Now is the time. Now is the time. In fact, I love this. There's somebody put on their Facebook that there's local wipes, you know, like disinfecting wipes, because there were university students who lost their jobs or jobs were postponed. And then suddenly a business emerged out of that because they saw a need, and businesses designed to serve human and earth needs and animal and plant needs as well. So I love that a business arose out of this tragic situation, and it was very emergent. I'm sure these students did not have a plan to create this business 2 months ago. So I think the more our businesses become presence-based, emergent-based with the kind of central pillars, the better we will all be. And really to consider that question too of how much is enough. Like we've gone through this time of corporate, of, you know, just too much. And it's time for us to all shed and let go of what is truly not necessary.
Yes, absolutely. What is truly important, and as you said before, which metrics are truly important. Great, we have a question here. Well, you didn't speak about this specific topic, but it's pretty relevant, and it's how can a workplace support employees' mental health right now as part of this caring concept of awakening company?
Well, mental health is super, super, super important, and I believe it should be embedded into everything we do. I think we need to bring humanity, the entire of humanity, back into organizations. And so for doing things like stillness breaks, my collaborators and I right now, we are in touch every day to support one another for connection. What I recently saw an organization do, which I thought was pretty awesome, was provide a list of local resources for mental health. And I think as leaders, there's a real invitation for us to be a source of inspiration for everybody that we're working with. So what's the smallest thing I can do? You know, so send a text, hop on a Zoom call, connect with your people, with our people, and also provide them with the necessary resources so that if they do need support, they have somewhere great to go. For example, in Calgary, I was on the board of the Distress Center. The Distress Center is a great place to go. They have chat lines, they have, you can call them, they're always open to listening. So providing the necessary resources, and I think also you might want to consider institutionalized connection. So what I'm meaning by that is have a real thoughtful process in terms of how leaders really connect with their people to support their mental well-being. And I'll just give an example. The schools right now are reaching out to say, hey, how are you doing?
Yes, no, absolutely. And also, not only important for leaders, but leaders to promote that culture of caring among the employees, right?
Mm-hmm, totally.
Their department. So, and that's a great thing to have in any company. Any other questions here in our chat? I don't see any other questions right now. Is there anything else that you would like to say in this chat to wrap up?
Well, Maria, I'd love to hear from some of the participants in terms of how are they actually doing and how are their businesses doing, because I think there's some really good news stories in all of this. So I'd love to hear from brave participants who are willing to kind of share a nugget of wisdom, because part of this awakening is it's a more collaborative energy, more collaborative, less telling, you know? So I would love to hear from participants what they're learning and what they're seeing and what they're doing.
Yes, please feel free to share with us all your the experience, the challenges that you are having right now. It would be great, and I'm sure it would be very insightful and inspirational for all of the other attendees. Great, we have one participant just put in the chat, how are we doing in education? I am inspired by high level of engagement by teachers as they put mental health needs of success before academic success.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And you know what's interesting, I was thinking about this yesterday due to a conversation about the whole concept of intrinsic motivation in students right now, because students, they're in Alberta, their grades are finalized. So whatever that date, March 13th, whatever their grade was, that's their grade. So, and yet school's continuing. And so I had an interesting conversation with my sons about intrinsic motivation last night. And I had a real surprise. Having a grade matters to them. So having some kind of goal matters. But what was important for me to hear is my sons are actually very motivated by the comments the teachers are putting in their report cards. So I thought that was really, really, really an important kind of aha for me, just that connection. Even though there's no end goal, like I'm not going to change their grade, but having that connection, teachers giving them feedback matters. So.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Great. We have from Shona, the resilience of clients right now and the ability to pivot is so key right now. I'm so proud of those that are taking this as a positive and focusing on the future of businesses. We can't go back to how it was. Absolutely.
100%, 100%, Shana. And it's, you know, the world is an opportunity right now in terms of how do we really want to show up and what our potential is. And I know Shauna, and Shauna is one of those leaders that is leading the way. So it's truly, truly a gift to have Shauna leading an organization. Organizations, plural.
It is, and now, so we are having in Startup Canada the Canny Awards, which we celebrate and recognize entrepreneurs from across Canada. So they are sharing their stories. We are going to start having the events every week, every Thursday from the last week of May until the last week of June. And all the entrepreneurs, how they are pivoting, how they had distilleries and they were selling beer and now they are having the hand sanitizers, and how even small companies, big companies from every industry, how they are pivoting and they just have this energy and how they are doing better and they want to improve every time and serve their community, not only for the sake of making more money, of course, but also how can they serve the community. And it's great how everything is revolutionizing, like how everything is changing, even in such a critical and sad situation that we're living right now. It is.
And isn't it amazing? Yet, you know, I think the old way is going to be an old way. I think we're really moving into this more emergent type of business. So the more flexible we can be to really solve human needs, that's where we should focus, is how can we solve some of the world's greatest challenges and how can we truly be of service to our wider community and to not be afraid of hard work.
Absolutely. Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Catherine. We don't have more questions right now. Let me check for the last time.
One thing, Maria, I would say is that, you know, back to that whole concept of the smallest thing, like the world's greatest things were created by one small thing at a time. And you never know when serendipity is going to touch one of those small things and it will just blossom. And unless we act on those small things, then we're in trouble. Because often we can get paralyzed in seeing the bigger picture, but not knowing what to do. So the real invitation is what's the smallest thing we can do, and invite everybody to kind of light up their canvas and come from that inner place and help to create the North Star for everybody.
That is true, and I think I'm going to put a post-it in my laptop with that phrase. What is the smallest thing you can do? Like, it's such a powerful, such a simple but powerful phrase that can apply for your personal life, for your work life, and it's about exactly that. Like everything that you can do. Sometimes you think that unless you do these massive changes, it's not good enough and nothing's going to happen. But if you start with small changes, it will. It is absolutely necessary and important. Thank you so much, Catherine, for all these for this amazing talk that we had today. If we don't have any more questions from our audience, we can wrap things up. Thank you so much for this, again, insightful presentation. Thank you for taking the time to share all this wonderful advice with us. To our amazing audience, thank you so much for joining us at the Women Entrepreneurs webinar series today. We hope you got valuable insights about how to improve your the culture in your company, no matter the industry, no matter how big it is. Please stay tuned on our next webinar that is tomorrow, Leadership Communications During the COVID-19 Crisis with Andrea Lekuchov, tomorrow noon. This webinar series will be recorded, as some of you were asking me, and we will upload under the Webinar Entrepreneurs Program section in the Startup Canada website as well. Feel free to register to our newsletter as well to receive all of the updates of events that we will have in the following weeks and months in Startup Canada, of course, all of them online. And thank you so much to everyone. Thank you so much, Kathleen.
Thank you so much, Maria, for what you're doing, and to Jolene behind the scenes as well. So it's time to start up.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Catherine.
Thank you. Take care, everybody. Thanks for being here.